Yeah, well, thank you very much, Mav and Phil. It's great to meet you here. For those in the community that don't know, Phil is with Lodestar, and perhaps maybe you've been sleeping under a rock for the past couple of months here. But Lodestar is one of the consensus beacon node and validator clients that runs um, the validation services on the Ethereum blockchain, and more importantly to us, it's one of the validators and consensus clients that Rocket Pool supports natively in the Smart Stack. Phil, welcome very much to our community call.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, everyone. Glad to be here.
Yeah, maybe if you could just take a few minutes, Phil, and maybe tell us a little bit about you. Maybe start with kind of how you started in the crypto or Ethereum journey and how you joined Lodestar.
Oh, wow. I probably need more than just a couple minutes, I guess, to do the whole story. But just basically to summarize it, I've been in the crypto community for a long time. Initially started off with Bitcoin back in 2013. What really garnered my attention in this sort of crypto space and really got me down the rabbit hole was the Mt. Gox hack. And that was actually what really got me digging into what Bitcoin is and the purpose of it existing. And then from that point on, luckily being a Toronto native, I had access to a lot of Bitcoin meetups and also some prominent initiatives that had started in Toronto at the time, including Ethereum. So since about 2015 when Ethereum launched. I had basically been following it since. I haven't really contributed, I would say, in any significant form until I joined ChainSafe in 2021. And it just was a perfect fit. The timing worked out well and was like, hey, maybe I should, not just hold Ether, but maybe actually do something to help the ecosystem out. And Lodestar was sort of my way into really helping out the Ethereum community with hopefully becoming the global settlement layer of the world.
Oh, excellent. And now tell me a little bit more about it. Maybe I should understand a little bit more about Lodestar, but what is it? Is it a subsidiary or is it a project team of a larger institution? And how did Lodestar get started out of that organization?
Yeah, so actually, our previous CTO, he's now our CPO at ChainSafe. His name is Greg Marcoux. He is at Greg the Greek on Twitter. Was one of the I guess the brainchild of Lodestar. In his mind, it was very important for us to include some sort of a JavaScript type implementation into what was known at the time as ETH2, ETH 2.0, when they were launching, a bunch of research and stuff into creating what is now, the beacon chain. JavaScript runs on pretty much like everything you can say. So it was very important that we supported that part of the ecosystem when it comes to the Ethereum beacon chain and ETH 2.0. Vitalik, I believe back in 2018 or 2019 had, first granted ChainSafe as part of this YOLO sort of donation to a bunch of client teams to really get started on the proof of stake stuff. Included Lodestar as part of that. So from there on, it kind of expanded and ChainSafe, kept contributing in many different ways to the JavaScript ecosystem in the ETH 2.0 community. And that is sort of, how we grew over time and now sort of have become a production ready client as of really like we proposed our first block on mainnet in November 2021, but we officially got the endorsement and the audit done to ensure that EF was happy with us being the fifth consensus client earlier this year actually. And the Lodestar team are basically we are ChainSafe contributors or people that work for ChainSafe, and ChainSafe is basically a protocol R&D sort of dev shop. We do a lot of different things, and protocol contributions is one of them, and we do that for Ethereum through Lodestar.
Oh, excellent. Now, besides client diversity, I mean, Rocketpool is very much client diverse, and it's a strong part of our ethos. But besides the diversity aspect, what are some of the attributes of Lodestar that may differentiate it from the other clients? Like, what are some of the selling points that I, as a node operator, would want to use Lodestar?
Yeah, so node operations is really just one target audience of Lodestar. For sure, with when it comes to node operators, the client diversity narrative is definitely the strongest, I would say. Obviously, we have 5 different consensus layer client teams for diversity. Just in case one fails, there's at least 4 others to sort of help progress the chain along. So there's really no doubt that the diversity aspect is probably close to number one, if not the biggest incentive for running Lodestar. I think what a lot of people fail to understand is when you are staking, it's not just about necessarily how much money you can make based on choosing, a client with like the best performance, but it's also important to understand the risks when using a majority type client. For example, with the Chapella hard fork that we just recently did, there was a slight issue with Prism as an example. But let's just say the consensus bug was large enough that all of the Prism validators fell off, and that would be like what, 30% of the network. When you think about it in these terms, it's very important to understand that if 30% of the network goes offline, the penalties for inactivity and leakage is a lot larger. So when you're thinking about which clients to use, it's very important to consider the risk of using a majority client. So really, it's not just about like the performance, and even if you go on beaconshot.in and try to compare some Lodestar nodes with some of the other ones, the profitability difference is not significant enough, in my opinion, to really be like, hey, I'm not going to use Lodestar or something because it's like making slightly less money or anything like that. So it's just a different viewpoint, I guess, that people should consider when it comes to node operations. And then, of course, we also target, the developer community with Lodestar. So we are completely written in TypeScript. And obviously, JavaScript is probably one of, if not the most used language with developers in the world. So we basically opened up this ecosystem of protocol development to the largest group of developers in the world, which is very important when it comes to ensuring that we can create a vibrant and thriving ecosystem where we can include as many contributors or potential contributors to the protocol community as possible. So we like to identify ourselves as like a client that is very useful for people to build things on top of, to potentially hack around with, to be able to do a lot of research and development with. And that would be like another target audience of Lodestar.
Oh, excellent. You kind of brought it up a little bit, but what was it like to be part of the client team during the last fork here during Chapella? What was your experience like during it?
Yeah, I think it's really cool to get to be a part of this community in which a lot of the work that we do and all the client teams do, it's we have a lot of responsibility on our shoulders, and we have a lot of incentive to ensure that we upgrade Ethereum with the least amount of turbulence possible. And it's always exciting, but it's a little bit nerve-wracking too. But a lot of us in the community have done our due diligence with the help of like the EF DevOps team, who runs a bunch of like mainnet shadow forks and stuff to ensure client compatibility between all the different client teams, and to really sift out bugs to minimize the potential for things to go wrong on mainnet. And I would say it's really like an honor to be part of a client team. Not a lot of people see protocol development as like something that is easy to do, but also will enrich you to the point of to a point of just buying a ton of ether and just sitting on it. So I guess like the altruism, perhaps the sort of fact that you have a large voice in how Ethereum can shape up. It's just if it was the 90s and I was contributing to like HTTP, like knowing that HTTP survived, decades and is still being used today is like, quite a bit of an honor to be part of. And I think that's the thing that drives me and keeps me going.
Oh, awesome. And certainly, like Rocket Pool, many of the folks probably listening to the call are on the node operator side versus the liquid staking token side of the house. And so we benefit greatly from the client teams, right? I mean, Rocket Pool does not have our own client. We simply just incorporate all the open source clients that are out there, both on the consensus layer and the execution layer, right? And as I mentioned before, Lodestar is one of the ones our node operators could select from. So a couple of questions is, one is, so, we as a community are benefiting greatly from your efforts and Lodestar efforts. How can the Rocket Pool community provide value back to Lodestar? What can we do to help you guys?
I think a lot of it is just getting more users to actually run Lodestar. I think what we kind of lack at the moment is having it battle tested by more people in the community. We obviously run some validators as well at ChainSafe as a Lido node operator. It helps us collect, metrics and being able to understand how we perform against other clients, and really is like, a good way for us to capture data and enable us to make our clients, perform better and just to catch issues. And of course, there's like an incentive for us to not screw this up. I think when it comes to Rocket Pool node operators, obviously we want people to try to run this stuff because we don't have all of the devices in the world to try this on. We've found actually a lot of some bugs relating to like ARM builds that we figured out because of Rocket Pool. So I think really just, especially with this incentive program, the whole point of it is to ensure that we can get as many people trying Lodestar as possible. And that's really our goal coming out of this, and where the Rocket Pool community can really help us out and make us a better client.
Oh, excellent. And I also understand that you've got an incentive program right now to kind of help and entice some node operators, independent node operators, to switch over to Lodestar. You want to share a little bit more about that and tell us how it applies to Rocket Pool?
Yeah, of course. So we kind of brainstormed this maybe about like a few months back as to how we can get more people to start using Lodestar. And unfortunately, at the protocol level, there is no real incentive outside of altruism that will incentivize people to switch and try Lodestar. So we had to figure out other ways to sort of make this happen. And ChainSafe has basically, put up 20,000 USD into this pool for this incentive program. And then due to the gracious donation of ETH Staker, the entire prize pool is now 25,000 USD. This program is basically a bit of an experiment for us because we want to figure out other ways for us to incentivize people to switch to Lodestar without having to rely on altruism. So now there's like a little bit of a financial aspect to it, and a little bit of like a game in terms of it's a bit of a lottery as well with this program. So there are obviously some rules in place. There is a blog post on blog.chainsafe.io for the full information. I'm just going to, very quickly try to guide, I guess, you guys on what this incentive program is and how you can easily be part of it. It's really, by running a beacon node and validator client with Lodestar, we want people to propose blocks with Lodestar as a way to signal that you're trying it out, and I think that's really what we want to get out of it. We are actively trying to, I guess, sort of have an overview of how many people are actually doing this, and switching over to Lodestar. That would be like a great metric for us to collect here. I think it's important that that we figure out whether or not an experiment like this actually works. So the main idea of this incentive program is that we have this pool of money in which we will distribute amongst eligible block proposers. And we're specifically targeting solo stakers here. We've purposefully excluded large node operators, such as the ones that are contributing to Lido, as an example, or anybody with over 360 ETH in total. So we've kind of put these rules in place, which you can see in the blog post, that will allow you to sort of see whether or not you're eligible. And generally, Rocket Pool node operators, I would assume, are solo stakers. It's generally people who maybe hold like 1 to less than 10 nodes, basically. So these are the people that we want to target. It's a 5-month duration. So it started slightly before the Chapella hard fork. I believe I posted this on March 23rd. We were giving people 5 months to be able to propose a block with Lodestar to be eligible for collecting a piece of this prize pool. So this prize pool is eligible to people who are proposing blocks with Lodestar, and we can verify it through something called Blockprint. I don't know if I fully explained everything, or if there's any additional questions specifically, Ken, that you'd want to ask about it.
Yeah, I'm watching our kind of channel in our Discord called the trading channel. It's more of our community channel in there to see if there's questions. But I think I got the gist of it. We just launched our new contract upgrades Atlas, and they allow for 8 ETH mini pool. So that means it only takes 8 ETH of the node operator to form a validator now. And so, yeah, if I understood you correctly, 360 ETH of the node operator divided by 8, that would be 45 mini pools. So I think our node operators that are running 45 mini pools or less, which is the vast majority of them, and we do have some whales out there that are running hundreds, but the vast majority, I would say, are below 45 mini pools, would be eligible. And if I recall correctly, we already have a kind of a little bit of graffiti that goes on that correlates to Lodestar. There's a set of 2-character codes that Joe has implemented that kind of indicate what our validators are running, unless somebody's overwritten it and kind of have to hack the code a little bit to overwrite it. So we should already be posting a fingerprint or a breadcrumb on the beacon chain about what our client diversity is. And I think I read that those native Rocket Pool fingerprints, little breadcrumbs, will qualify our node operators for the contest. So I think, unless I'm hearing it wrong, that all they have to simply do is go into the TUI, switch from their consensus layer of choice, scroll down the list to Lodestar, and hit enter, and just let the smart stack switch over your client. You will experience a 15-minute wait as it switches the clients and just reassures that the slashing window has passed, because there are different slashing databases. But it's literally as simply as easy as just going into the TUI, selecting Lodestar, and hit enter.
Yeah, unfortunately, unfortunately, I'm not a Rocket Pool operator yet, so I definitely don't know the user experience of switching over. But just from hearing what you've said, Ken, it sounds like it's a very simple switch on the smart node stack end.
Yeah, it really is. I think that's personally one of the benefits of Rocket Pool, and not only in client diversity, but in the event, if there was an instance, and I've certainly had my luck of choosing a couple of the clients that didn't fare too well through a couple of the upgrades, and tried to stay with them through a little bit of the turbulence, but decided to switch over at some point to give the teams time. And it's just super easy with Rocket Pool. Like I said, it's 30 seconds of work and a 15-minute wait, and that's about it.
Nice. That's really good to hear. I think I may have misspoken a little bit earlier. I heard you say 360 ETH. I'll go over like just some of the like the rules here. I think it might be useful,
Yeah,
and if people have
please.
questions, we can go from there.
Yeah. Please, how many? Like, what are the eligibility requirements, please?
Of course. So actually, I'll start here with my blog post. So number one, the graffiti, in which you already mentioned. When it comes to Rocket Pool, we've accepted the Rocket Pool acronyms in the graffiti now because it was at the request of you guys in the community because of the limited amount of characters we can have on the graffiti. So we do accept, the RP hyphen GS, NS, BS, and XS. As part of the graffiti requirements now. For a solo validator, it would have just been like the Lodestar text. The reason why we modified is, of course, so that it works, kind of out of the box, I guess, for Rocket Pool node operators, which is nice. This just basically signals to us which blocks to look at when we hit the 5-month duration of when this program is sort of open and eligible. And then from that point on, we'll actually use something called block print to verify that the blocks that were proposed are likely from a Lodestar client. And then there's some other technicalities and stuff within using block print that might be a bit out of scope for this call, but basically the idea of using block print is that it helps us verify outside of the graffiti requirements whether or not somebody actually proposed a block, likely with Lodestar, or if they were just trying to game the graffiti. So that's why we use that. Next up is the unique deposit address. So when you deposit into the ETH2 deposit contract on the execution layer, you usually as a solo operator would do it through a unique sort of deposit address. If you were perhaps like a Lido node operator, chances are you probably use the same deposit address for multiple, maybe hundreds or even thousands of validators on the blockchain. So when we do put the blocks through the block print crawler and it turns out that yes, these are likely Lodestar proposed blocks, we'll check the deposit address just to make sure that it comes from something unique. In terms of Rocket Pool, we had to have a slight modification because of the way the mini pools kind of work. So because you have 16 and 8 ETH mini pools, which are basically contracts, we had to ensure that the deposit address, when it comes to the uniqueness of it, is what actually gets deposited to the mini pool contracts themselves, and not, I guess, the sort of mini pool contract itself. So if you're using, a deposit address to deposit your Ether into mini pool contracts, as long as that deposit address does not come from an address that has, in total 320 ETH of deposits, no matter what combination, could be a combination of solo or 16 ETH mini pools or 8 ETH mini pools. The idea of limiting this is so that we're not targeting whales. We'd like to see that it's more solo stakers that are actually part of this incentive program. So we kind of arbitrarily, chose 320 ETH as that upper limit. So that's why we have to verify the unique deposit address.
Oh, got it. So it would be 10.
Oh, sorry, I think I lost you there, Ken, for a second. You said.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, so if I'm understanding that, 320 ETH of deposits on the Beacon chain would mean a Rocket Pool node operator that's running 10 mini pools, so at 32 each, even though they only contributed 8 ETH per mini pool, it's still node operators running 10 validators or less is what you're targeting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, look, you could game this if you really wanted to, but it's quite a bit of work because if you're going to, use more than 320 ETH in your possession to, perhaps do some sort of a Sybil attack where you have different deposit addresses, creating a bunch of different mini pools and stuff like this, the stuff that we understand may potentially happen. I have no idea, but this is why this rule exists, is so that we don't target people who personally have more than 320 ETH at their disposal.
Yep,
Yeah.
totally. Makes total sense. Seems very fair and very exciting to have such an incentive program to help encourage diversity of the clients in there. So it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's great. And I think so when I was talking to ETH Staker about this, one of the things that they mentioned to me was they really want to see how successful this program is in perhaps switching some people to even at least try Lodestar, because there might be ways for us to help get all client teams to a 20% share of the validator network, which is the most ideal sort of disbursement of client usage for the blockchain, the sort of healthy sort of division of the pie. So if this is great, who knows, somebody might take this concept and expand upon it. We could maybe even have some sort of a public funds pool of some sort in the next round or something. But these are just ideas floating around. So this is why, we're actively keeping an eye on this program to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, we've covered quite a number of things about Lodestar and Lodestar's new incentive program to encourage adoption of the consensus layer client. Are there any things that we didn't cover today that you feel is important for us, to the Rocket Pool community, to know about Lodestar?
I think it's important, I guess, like what we mentioned before, the best way you can help us out is actually just trying to run Lodestar. Lodestar is definitely going to hopefully be one of the more used clients at some point. Maybe not even necessarily for staking, but maybe even just for like experimentation stuff. But the best way you can help us out is running it, and if you encounter any sort of issues, letting us know about it. I think the only way that we can ensure that we're a stronger client and to remain very useful and viable to the community is that more people run it, and we can fix more of the problems that we have together. And I think that's the best thing that the community can really help us with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you, Phil, come on the call and share a little bit more. And I encourage you to stop by trading and stop by and say hi to everybody in the community.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ken. It was great to speak to you guys. And feel free to join our Discord at the ChainSafe Discord as well. We have our website, lodestar.chainsafe.io, which is basically our splash page to getting some information about Lodestar.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and
before you switch gears, let me just interject here. Yep. Taking a look at the graffiti now, so far based on proposals, it looks like we have somewhere between 20 and 25 validators that are running it right now.
Oh, that is awesome. If you also look in, well, you can also do the basic math yourself, but if we just have 25 eligible blocks at this point, that's quite a bit of change, I guess, for each one of them. So quite a good incentive.
Yeah. So I know officially the smart node that we used for mainnets didn't have like Lodestar support until just a couple of weeks ago. So it looks like people are already taking that opportunity, even though it's a short window, to start switching over and try it out, which is cool to see.
Amazing. Yeah. Great to see. And then just even browsing through Beacon Shot right now, looking at the slots, there's definitely some people here, even outside of Rocket Pool, that have been participating, which is nice to see as well.
Yeah. If you throw a POAP in there as well too, I bet you'll probably double your numbers.
That's actually a great idea. You're the second person to suggest this to me.
Yeah, the racquetball community has an irrational thing for going crazy about POEP, so absolutely.
Definitely. That's definitely not out of the question. We will consider that.
Excellent, excellent. Well, okay, I'll go ahead and transition the call over to just the regular community items. Phil, you're more than welcome to continue and hang on and listen in if you like. If you have to go, we certainly understand it. But do stop by trading and at least say hi to the gang in there. But Joe and Mav, it is now post Atlas. I do not have to begin today's call with asking when Atlas. I'll have to figure out what house to ask for. But how was your experience? Both I heard Mav a little bit about you and the little chit chat, the little impromptu chit chat. But what are you thinking the day after Atlas? Maybe Joe, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I mean, I've basically been awake since it launched. We at the team we try to take turns, but like we go in shifts, watching the logs on the watchtowers, watching the protocol, making sure that things are working properly, that the Oracle DAO is functioning correctly, that the node is doing its job properly, and that there aren't any sort of like cataclysmic bugs that node operators are running into, that kind of stuff. And so I'm on the shift now, and as the guy who kind of built the watchtower, I guess I was on the shift when it first launched, basically just puddling things. And so I have been trying to take breaks occasionally to interact with the community and just keep things fairly lighthearted, see what's going on in the support forum, see if anybody needs help with anything major. I mean, there are lots of minor things, lots of people that aren't super familiar with it, maybe not be familiar with the documentation and need a little bit of handholding as to what's changed and how to do things, like access their beacon chain capital, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it seems like it was actually a very successful fork with no exciting issues or turbulence or at all, which is, I'm not sure I believe it quite yet, is how I would describe it. I'm just sort of sitting here watching these logs, waiting for something to break, and nothing is breaking. And so I'm slowly building confidence that we actually did it right, you know? It was good.
I think I'll echo that from my non-technical perspective. For a little while, I was kind of sitting around waiting for the first problem to crop up. It just seems such a significant and important upgrade. And to have it go through without even the smallest of hiccups, I think it's a real testament to the skill of my colleagues. But at least for me, most of my time's been just seeing what people are saying about Atlas out on Twitter and the various types of media coverage, which is still rolling through. Unlike Joe, I have managed to grab a little bit of sleep, but even in that 5 hour or so period, there's still a lot more chatter coming through. And I think once we kind of roll around to that 24-hour period since launch, or even 36 hours, we've got like 24 hours of new mini polls coming through, and some of these metrics in terms of growth start to get out there. We'll probably see a second wave of attention, I think, when you start to see some of these really big 1 day, 24-hour growth metrics. I think a lot of people will be pretty surprised. But overall, it was a pretty incredible experience to be a part of. Of course, as is tradition, my main purpose for these things is just to go on camera and drink beer out of a shoe, but more than happy to contribute that. And I see some people managed to get a couple of good screen grabs of it this time around. So I don't know if we need a new emote in the Discord, but that beer tasted pretty good.
Yeah, I was thinking, when you go check in with the family and, a relative says, "Hey, Mav, what did you do at work today?" I don't know how you go about explaining that one, but I give you absolute credit for doing that now twice. Tell me a little bit, maybe Joe or maybe Mav, like what telemetry do we have on this Atlas? I mean, have you guys taken a second to kind of measure how it's performing, how many mini pulls, how many new LEB8s? I'm seeing some stats come through, but what are you looking at on your consoles?
I can certainly start with that. So what we're looking at primarily is we've got the standard node operator Grafana dashboard, And then at the bottom, it shows you some stats on like the Rocket Pool network as a whole. So we certainly have that, which is quite useful for keeping tabs on like how big the deposit pool is, how many mini pools there are, how many nodes there are, like the node actual count and things like that. And then we have some supplemental stuff that is just for the Watchtower. So the Oracle DAO that kind of takes a look at the scrub checks to validate that people are bond reducing properly, they're not in violation of the rules for that, their solo staker migrating properly, their new mini pools are being created properly, no one's trying to front run the deposit or anything like that. We've got all that stuff up as well. And so we're just mostly keeping tabs on those scrub checks to make sure that everything is going well, because part of the scrub checks is you can see individually how much of each category people are doing. So for example, I was kind of giving some numbers throughout the night. At the highest point, we saw something like 1,600 or 1,650 simultaneous bond reductions going through the scrub check. And that number has slowly tapered off as people exit that 12-hour period, and then more come in, so it's just kind of been hanging out at around 1,100 right now. And that seems to be consistent for the most part. There's a lot of bond reductions coming through. It seems like a lot of people are certainly taking advantage of the conversion from a 16 Ether mini pool down to an 8. We see over 1,000 new mini pools being created. There are 750 in pre-launch right now, and then a bunch of them got out of pre-launch, out of the 12-hour scrub check already. Node operators are actually fairly small. We saw something like 21 new node operators show up. If that's, it's around 20, I would say, over the last 24 hours. So it seems like the bulk of the activity is coming from people that are already in the ecosystem. They already have mini pools that they're running. They already have nodes that they've registered, that kind of thing. And we see a lot of, well, earlier on, we saw a lot of people, once they had finished the bond reduction process, make a second mini pool for free, which is what LEV migration gives you. But that has certainly tapered off in the last couple of hours, and I think that's primarily because the network gas cost is really high right now, and it's just not worth it. Like the break-even point is quite high, and so they're waiting for gas to calm down a little bit. And full disclosure, I'm among those people. I'm waiting for it to go back down to the 40s.
Well, yeah, let me explore that just with you a little bit, because I spent some time helping folks out in support, and I do agree that I think most of our day one growth has been people inside the system taking advantage of the LEB8s. But let me ask just a little bit of questions on this thing that seem to cause a lot of confusion. It might be good to go through. I guess the first thing is,
sure.
Before you really can do anything, you've got to do this mini pool delegate update or upgrade, right? And there's a couple of ways to do that. Can you explain that one more time as folks are coming in here? What does it mean to update your delegate, and why are we doing it, and how do they do that?
Okay, I'm going to keep it really brief because I could go into very detailed descriptions about this. The long story short is every validator is tied to a mini pool. The mini pool is a contract on the execution layer, right? It's one validator to one mini pool. They're uniquely paired like that. And the mini pool contract itself actually has very little functionality. It's just bare bones. It's not got a lot of stuff in there. But we take advantage of a kind of property or a feature that Ethereum provides that allows you to extend a contract, so to speak, by pointing it at a delegate. And that's a second contract that lives somewhere that has supplemental functionality, extra functionality that the contract basically adopts, right? And the idea with Atlas was we created a new, what's called mini pool delegate. That's a new contract that is kind of a common thing. And so everybody's individual mini pools can point to this one contract to gain lots of extra functionality. For example, the Atlas delegate knows how skimming works. It knows how to deal with skimmed rewards, which the original Rocket Pool delegate did not because it wasn't in the spec at that time. It just had full withdrawals and that was it. So when I say, or when the documentation asks you to upgrade your delegate for your mini pool, what it really means is they're asking you to run a command using the CLI that points your mini pool to this new delegate contract, this new contract that has its new functionality instead of the old one, so your mini pools can all adopt that new functionality. It's an opt-in process, and that's by design to make sure that if something goes horribly wrong and the Oracle DAO gets compromised and they push a mini pool delegate that is malicious, that you as the node operator can simply choose to ignore that, and if they can't rug you, essentially. So it's an opt-in feature that you have to purposefully do. But in this case, the mini pool delegate is something that we built. We trust it. We've had it audited. We've had it tested on the test nets. We're confident that it does what it's supposed to do and adds the proper functionality. So we encourage everybody to upgrade to that to take advantage of some of the new features Atlas has, like being able to skim or access your skimmed rewards via what's called a distribution, or to migrate your mini pools from a 16 ether bond down to an 8 ether, and things like that. That's all stuff that the new delegate supports, but the old one does not.
Okay.
Does that answer that question?
Yeah, it does. And so I think if you're listening to it as a node operator, or just, if you haven't done it yet, you're going to have to do it to either get your rewards or to convert any existing mini pools back. So it's kind of like you don't have a choice, really. I guess you can. Well, even in this one, you can't really quit and get your money back. So you gotta. This is kind of like a forced upgrade if you think about it, right? There's not really a pathway not to upgrade out of here. Because withdrawals aren't enabled in the version 1 of the mini pool delegate, right? We're on version 2, the Atlas version. Tell me a little bit now about the consensus layer rewards. I think it was very confusing for folks to realize that there's 2 different flow pathways, right? There's execution layer rewards that are coming into our smoothing pool and our mini pool contracts. But now consensus layer rewards are a little different. Can you just, briefly tell us how that flow works, and how do people get paid for the couple of years of validating that they've done? How do I start getting my consensus layer rewards?
Yeah, so this is all covered in the documentation quite thoroughly. And so if anyone were to ask, like in Discord for help on this, I would just point them right to the docs, which covers it all. But to cover it briefly, there are 5 kind of flavors/sources of rewards for being a validator. On the beacon side, you have attestations, you've got the beacon portion of block proposals, you've got sync committees, and then on the execution side, for a block proposal, you've got the execution portion, which is things like MEV or transaction priority fees, and then you've got your RPL rewards as well. And those 5 different types are kind of split based on where they live, either on the consensus layer or on the execution layer. So on the consensus layer, all of those rewards kind of accrue into your validator balance, and now that Chappelle is out, occasionally, it's like every 5 or 6 days or whatever, the protocol itself, without any interjection on your behalf, is automatically going to take the excess, the rewards, everything beyond 32 ether for that validator, and it's going to submit it to your mini pool. I mentioned earlier that each validator has its own unique mini pool contract. It's a one-to-one mapping. And so that's kind of what allows us to do this, is each validator's balance will essentially get skimmed, which is taking the rewards portion above 32 ether and put down into the mini pool contract on the execution side. And that is done.
And I think, Joe, it's important to mention there that there's nothing the node operator can do to stop that or start that. It's automatic, and there's no gas. It's not sucking any gas to do that. It's something Ethereum is doing, right?
Yep, it's baked directly into the protocol itself. It doesn't require transaction. It doesn't require you to voluntarily submit things or running the node process or anything. It just happens. All right, so that's the consensus side of things. Essentially is going to put each of your validator rewards into each mini pool contract. So it is 1 contract per validator, which means that the consensus layer rewards, if you have a couple of mini pools, are going to be split across a couple of contracts. And so you're going to have to call into each contract individually and run what's called a distribute, which splits your rewards, or splits the balance of that evenly between yourself and the rETH stakers, taking into account your commission for your node and giving that to you as well. So that's sort of like a many-to-many kind of thing. The second portion you mentioned, the execution layer rewards, those behave differently, for sure. All of those, the execution layer rewards, so that's things like the priority fees you get when you propose a block, MAV rewards, RPL rewards, inflation rewards, that kind of stuff. All of that goes to 1 contract within your node. So that's sort of like a many-to-one thing. So if you have lots of mini pools, all of those rewards will accumulate in a single spot. If you are in the smoothing pool, they will all go to the smoothing pool, and you will be given a share of those based on your performance at the end of each interval, each 28-day rewards period, and you can just claim that with your RPL rewards. They're all attached to the same file. If you're not in the smoothing pool, first of all, you should be in the smoothing pool, and second of all, that will go to your fee distributor instead, which is a unique contract tied to your node itself. So all of your mini pool rewards go to that central location, that one fee distributor contract. And the way you distribute those, I think it's like in the CLI, it's Rocket Pool node distribute fees or something like that. I believe that's the command.
Yeah, I think so as well too. And I think a couple of interesting things is it's just like, so how does this play out in reality, right? Like, I think for many of us, we probably claim our execution layer, our smoothing pool rewards and our RPL inflation, right? There's not an automatic process for that, right? You go in, you manually claim it. Most of us probably do it every 28 days, or some of us may let it, let it accumulate and just claim it all at once, right? There's no expiration anymore. You can just leave it there, or you can claim it, right? Same thing, I guess, a little different though, is on the consensus layer, right? Back to the mini pools. It's not, the consensus layer rewards are not going to just one mini pool contract. They're going to each mini pool contract that you have, right? And there is, I guess, a trigger point built into the TUI at 1 ETH, right? That will fire off when they reach 1 ETH, unless you've gone in and changed it in the TUI. For many of us, getting 2 years worth of validating rewards, it probably had more than 2 ETH in there. But folks, can still manually claim it, but they should probably wait till it builds up. I mean, there's no reason to go claim it every 6 days out of these contracts. We'd be spending more in gas, especially today. We'd be spending more in gas than you would be earning rewards. I think the ideal is it's got to kind of accumulate in these mini pool contracts till it makes it, financially worth it to claim, right? Am I thinking this right or thinking it wrong?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, the decision is yours as the node operator. You can do whatever you want. I would advise that you let it accumulate to make it more gas efficient to actually do the claiming, because the gas cost of claiming is kind of a fixed number, but the rewards you get depend on how much is actually in the balance. So letting it just slowly build up and then doing a claim when it's kind of cost efficient to do is certainly the right way to go. But you don't have to. You can claim every 6 days if you so choose. I don't think that's a great idea, but we give you the option to do it, sure.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you for just kind of walking that through, because I think it's something different. I think the community gets a little confused over it, and these processes do get a little complex altogether. So I think once we go through a couple of cycles of this thing, then it becomes second nature to us. But let's talk a little bit about something I'm very excited about, and I got to tell you, I'm having FOMO because I haven't done this yet. I'm trying to be I'm trying to be a little bit more mature and conservative instead of just leaping into everything. But tell us about these LEBs, right? There's a lot of confusion in this process, right? And I was thinking about it. I really think that it's kind of a 4-step process, right? There's this, beginning the bond reduction, there's reducing the bond, then there's forming the second LEB8 using the credits, and then finally, finalizing or staking that LEB8. Can you walk us through slowly each of these 4 steps and just tell us, like, what are the rules, or what are the time limits? Do I manually do it? Like, when does this happen? Just because support has been going crazy over these things. So walk us through it slowly and explain it to us like we're 5, if you can.
Yeah. So again, this is something that is covered quite thoroughly in the documentation and the guides, and I would encourage anybody who has kind of confusion or questions to read that first, and then come back with questions about what that says, just because it covers the bulk of what you're asking for. I won't go into the rules per se of like what counts as legal versus illegal. It's too much to get into for that, but it's all there on the documentation site. But I can walk you through the steps, the basic stuff, and talk about the timing. I can certainly do that. So the way you're asking basically, how do I take, if I have one active 16 Ether mini pool today, how do I convert it into 2 active LEB8s? That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, and assume I've got enough RPL staked that I don't have to worry about feeding it any more RPL. I just want to take
Okay.
my half 16 and make it to 2 LEB8s.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to assume that the RPL side of the house has been taken care of, and I'm going to ignore that then. So the first step is going to be what's called the bond reduction, and this is kind of it has two sub-steps, if you will. You start off by running the command rocket pool mini pool begin bond reduction, and that will trigger your mini pool to sort of enter this special phase where a bond reduction is pending. You have stated your intention to reduce this mini pool from a 16 down to an 8, and in so doing, gain 8 ether worth of credit you can use to make a second mini pool. We'll get to that later. But you've sort of stated your intent here. And then you have a 12-hour window. It's called the scrub check, one of several scrub checks that we're paying attention to that I mentioned earlier, where the Oracle DAO is going to monitor your mini pool and ensure that it satisfies the criteria for bond reduction eligibility. So the beginning process is not actually reducing your bond, it is simply stating the intent, I would like to reduce the bond. And the Oracle DAO will ensure that your mini pool is eligible for bond reduction. That takes 12 hours. Once that process is done, and you can check on how long it has by looking at the node logs, that's Rocket Pool Service Logs node. Once that's done, the node will either automatically reduce the bond of your mini pool if the network gas is within the threshold that you've specified for automatic transactions, or you can do so manually if you so choose. You can automatically reduce the bond yourself, and I think that's Rocket Pool Mini Pool Reduce Bond is the command for it.
And this is the part where everybody who last night at the launch of Atlas began the bond reduction. This is where everybody is probably coming up on, right? Is they're in this reduced bond period.
Probably, yeah. So you want to take a look at your node logs, and once the time is done, if it doesn't automatically reduce the bond because the network gas is too high for your particular setup, then you can either wait for network gas to come lower or do it manually. And that reduce bond is the second of those sub-steps I mentioned. And that is where you originally signaled your intents to reduce, the Oracle DAO gave you the all clear, your mini pool is not in violation of any of the sort of like illegal state problems that we would have. And so they've given you a pass and you can go ahead and reduce it. And at that point, once you trigger the reduction, what will happen is your collateral will go down to 8 ether instead of 16, it'll go down to 8. Your commission will be set to 14%. Doesn't matter what it was before, it just gets hard set to 14%. And it will do a distribution of the mini pool's balance. So whatever balance is in the mini pool, at the time that you reduced it, it will take your original commission rate and your original collateral, and it will run a distribute, which is basically like splitting the rewards between yourself, the node operator, and the pool stakers, and giving them their share, giving you your share. Your share becomes available as a refund that you can claim anytime you want. It doesn't get automatically sent to your withdrawal address, it just gets put earmarked as a refund that you can pull out. And then
Okay,
once that
let me ask you some questions on here, and I'm kind of watching the chat here for some other ones. So this reduced bond period, right? We've cleared the scrub. It's been 12 hours. The ODAO has an objective. We've cleared the scrub. Now there's a limited period of time for which people can do this second step, the bond, the reduced bond, the rocket pool, mini pool, reduced bond. How long of a window do people have?
Technically, you have 2 days to do it before your mini pool time is out, and you have to start over and do it all over again.
Okay, I was going to ask. So what happens if you miss it? Is there any damage, or is it just lost gas and lost time?
Yeah, so there's 2 ways that you can miss it. The first way is it just times out, which means you were eligible to reduce your bond in this 48-hour period, and you just didn't for whatever reason. And if that happens, it's kind of like no harm, no foul. You start over again. You are allowed to begin bond reduction a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time, or what have you. All that changes is you have to pay for the gas of the first bond reduction, which didn't end up doing anything. So now you have to pay for it a second time and to get another shot at the window. The second thing that could happen is your bond reduction was actually scrubbed, which is where the Oracle DAO found you in violation of one of the conditions for bond reduction, and it forced canceled you during that 12-hour window. If you get scrubbed, then you cannot attempt a bond reduction again. You're basically out. It is one and done. You are flagged for some kind of violation, and that mini pool will stay a 16 Ether mini pool for the rest of its life.
Okay, interesting. And what's the I mean, what would be the ineligibility? I guess you were slashed, or you're less than 32 ETH. I mean, what else besides those things would cause you to not qualify?
Yeah, so that's where you should go to the documentation website because it lists all of the rules very clearly. But essentially, it is if your validator has less than 31.99 Ether in it, like if you've been offline for a long time and you're kind of a bad node operator.
Yeah.
If your validator has already exited, it's already withdrawn, or it's been slashed or anything like that on the beacon chain, it's ineligible as well. If it's not staking already and not active on the beacon chain, it's ineligible. And the CLI won't let you do a bond reduction if you are in an illegal state. They will complain and basically say this guy can't run because of these reasons. If you bypass the CLI and you try to access the contracts directly, that's where the Oracle has to get involved and scrub you.
Okay, perfect. And then another question that's coming up here is, okay, so I've reached this reduced bond window, right? I know that the smart node has a gas setting, and the node container is going to realize, oh, hey, I've got a mini pool that could have its bond reduced, and if the gas is below that threshold, it will fire the transaction. But I've got mine set conservatively around 30 Gwei, and right now I'm looking at it, we're at 72 Gwei, right? It's just been on fire this last day. So it's not going to automate it, right? But so then what happens? Will it ever accelerate it and force it like it does the real scrub on a brand new mini pool, or does it accelerate that pricing and ignore it, or do I have to go in and manually decide to do it, or just let it abort and do it again, let it time out?
So the way that the CLI handle, or rather the way the daemon handles things right now is it is largely derived from the code used for the mini pool staking transaction, which is the second beacon deposit for your mini pool to actually get it kicked off and start validating. It's derived from the same thing. So you have 2 days between the end of the scrub period and the timeout for your bond reduction. That's 2 days long, but the daemon will give you 24 hours because it's trying to do this automatic bond reduction sort of process, this transaction. It finds when one of these things is due and it tries to do it automatically for you. And if in the first 24 hours it is unable to do so because gas has been too high for your settings or whatever, as soon as that 24 hours is over, it's going to try to do it again at whatever the network gas price is. It just says, give me the, so we ask the Beacon Chain website, they have a gas oracle that has a rapid price and a fast price and a standard price and that kind of thing. We take whatever the rapid price is and we're just submit it at that. So whatever the network market price is, just go to make it guaranteed to work. And the reason we did that was primarily because we didn't want people to have bond reduction cancellations and not understand why and have to deal with this again. We just want it to work, but we're certainly open to feedback since this is a repeatable process and it can be kind of done again if you miss your window, as opposed to mini pool stakes, which cannot. If people would prefer that we just let it time out and we don't actually force stake at the current network gas price or whatever, we can change that in a future version.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So everybody, the hundreds, if not thousands, of node operators or validators that have started this process, right, are all going to come up in the next 12 hours or so to that 24-hour window. And so if folks don't do something, their node is just going to send pay any price transaction to get it to go through, or at least up to the amount of ETH in the node wallet, right? Just going to try to force it through.
Yeah, it'll just try to force it through, exactly.
Yeah.
You can disable that, certainly, but
yeah, okay.
It's disabling it would disable all of the automatic transactions, which isn't recommended if you're planning on spinning up new mini pools.
Okay. So I think we're experiencing and kind of understanding how that reduced bond window goes, and I think it'd be interesting to see kind of what happens to these hundreds of validators that are in this window, and in the next couple of hours what they decide to do. Do they let the smart node just pay full market gas prices? Do we see people trying to control it a little bit, looking for some maybe cheaper gas this evening when the U.S. goes to sleep? Or is it just this is going to be a real busy week in Ethereum? I'm looking at it now; it's at 92 Gwei and going up here. But okay, so let's say that I was fortunate enough, or I just pay the gas and suck the cost here, and and I actually go through it. I do the bond reduction. I'm at a 14% LEB8, and I've got these 8 ETH credits in my account. And I'm guessing this is going to be the next step here. What do people do with those 8 ETH credits? How do I get my second LEB8? Foreshadow for us what is going to happen here. And again, I know it's probably in the documentation, but I don't think anybody's been reading the documentation from my help in the support channel.
Yeah, so you're right in the sense of it is all in there, and your first line of defense is to link people to the documentation and give them something to read, and then they come back with questions that are a little more specific about things that maybe were unclear or things that it didn't quite cover or anything like that. But by and large, that would be the first line of defense, just to go look at the docs for this. But one thing I want to highlight first and foremost is after the bond reduction is complete and you have converted your 16 Ether mini pool to an 8 Ether mini pool, you are given what's called 8 Ether of node credit. And this is sort of like an internal bookkeeping balance that's used to determine how much sort of supplemental ETH you are allowed to pull from the staking pool beyond the original 16 or 24, depending on the mini pool you're trying to create next. This credit, and I want to highlight this because we do get this question sometimes, this credit cannot be like withdrawn as liquid 8 Ether and used for whatever. You can't take it and stick it into your favorite DeFi protocol, for example. It can only be used for creating new mini pools within the ecosystem. So if you wanted to access it right away, you would have to create another mini pool and then like immediately exit it and then do a distribute just to get the balance back and that kind of thing, which is probably going to eat into your margins a little bit because it costs a lot of gas to do all of that. So the intent of it is if you're planning to do this, then it means you're going to be spinning up a second mini pool, a second LEB8, as it were, and you're hopefully going to be in this for the long run, just sort of gaining capital as you do as a staker. The process is exactly the same as it was when you first created your mini pool, and understandably it's been a long time since some of you have created mini pools, but the process is exactly the same. You run rock pool node deposit, that's the main command for creating a new mini pool. It's going to ask you how much ether you want to provide, and you're going to say 8. That's going to be your bond, and it will say, okay, you have 8 ether in credit, so I'm just going to use the credit balance instead of you needing to provide 8 ether yourself. You just have to provide 0 ether. You just have to pay for gas, essentially, and I will take care of the rest. I will pull all 32 ether needed to kick this guy off and put him on the beacon chain. I'll pull the entire thing from the staking pool, from the deposit pool. You don't have to worry about paying for anything. So the node deposits will start the mini pool, and you'll get put into the queue, waiting for the match to come in. Basically,
Let me give it, Joe, if I can. Let me just ask you a question on there before you go to that point, because I think there was 2 things that I realized in the test net that I think are important. Is that these 8 ETH credits, they're literally like credits. I could use those 8 ETH in this example to form my second LEB8. I think that's what most people are going to do, probably, for a lot of reasons. But I learned you can also just combine 2 of those. Maybe you had too many pools. You could take 16 ETH worth of credits and make a half, a 16 ETH mini pool, right?
Oh yeah, totally. If
Yeah.
basically the credit system just says whatever bond you're trying to provide, if you have enough credits to cover the bond, it will use the credit instead. So that can be 16 too. That's fine.
And then the other thing I think that's just important to get out there in the community is, since you're doing this node deposit without any real ether, you're just cashing in credits. There does have to be at least 1 ETH in the deposit pool. I know we're kind of approaching, it's still surprisingly doing very well with deposits. It's got thousands of ETH in there now, but I don't know about tomorrow. So when it starts to get empty, the deposit pool gets empty. In order to redeem this, there has to be at least one ETH in there to make that redemption. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're getting a little technical here, but essentially when you deposit Ether into the beacon deposit contract on the execution layer to sort of signify that you're creating a new validator, something that the beacon chain can hone in on, the smallest deposit you're allowed to do is 1 Ether. And so the staking pool has to have, for that very first deposit, sort of define your mini pool, define the pub key and stuff. It has to have 1 Ether in order to do that. And since you're with a credit balance, you're pulling all 32 Ether for the validator from the staking pool. It has to have at least one to kind of like trigger this process. If the staking pool is too low and there's not 1 Ether left and you're trying to use a credit balance, the CLI will actually like notify you. It comes up with a warning and says, "All right, we understand you've got a credit balance here. There's not enough in the deposit pool to cover it right now. So you have two options. Number one is you wait until deposits come in and then you can do it again, or you front the cost yourself and you just leave the credit there, sort of to use at a later date. The choice is yours."
Oh, I did not know that. Interesting. And Joe, there's no time limit, right? If I've got these 80th credits, I don't have a window that's collapsing on me. I can take my time and decide what to do with it.
Yeah, the credit is a permanent balance. It doesn't go anywhere. It's not like you have 30 days to use it or it disappears or whatever.
Perfect. Okay. And so, Joe, you were telling us, I've gone ahead. I've done the node deposit. There was 1 ETH in there. I'm making my second mini pool, and then what?
So at that point, I mean, it just acts like a conventional mini pool that was created. The only difference is you didn't pay for it. The staking pool did. But that is the same process as every other node deposit. You have 12 hours to go through the scrub check. It's a different kind of scrub check, but the process is very analogous. The Oracle DAO is going to verify that your mini pool satisfies all the conditions to actually become a rock pool validator. You haven't tried to like front run with the withdrawal credentials or anything. You haven't done anything malicious. And once it passes the 12 hours and the Oracle DAO has given you the all clear, you can do the second deposit. It's called a stake transaction, and that will either happen automatically via the node process, or you can do it manually if you so choose through the CLI. It's Rocket Pool Mini Pool Stake is the command. And that will do the second deposit on the beacon chain, thus completing the validator, so submitting all 32 required Ether to the beacon chain and getting you up and running into the beacon queue and ultimately validating.
Okay, and because it has been a while since I've made a mini pool even myself here, we cleared the scrub. It's a 12-hour scrub. Thank you. I think I had it wrong in my show notes. Then there's a 14-day window, right? So a nice long period of time. Hopefully gas comes below my threshold and my
14
node.
days.
Yeah,
Oh,
14 days.
to do the stake,
No?
right. Yeah. Yeah, so you're talking about the time between when you're eligible to stake and when you actually stake.
Yes,
right?
correct. Is that, do I have that right or no?
Yeah, so there's a 14-day timeout between once you become eligible and once you actually do it. And if
Okay.
you don't stake in that 14-day window, you get what's called dissolved. And that's basically where the Oracle DAO considers you to be defunct and it removes the supplemental Ether from your mini pool and puts it back in the staking pool for other people to use.
Okay. So in this whole process here, that final fourth step, when I'm supposed to be calling stake on my second LEB8, right? The one that I created using my credits, my 80th credits, that's the step that I don't want to miss, right? Because it's a little tricky to come out of the dissolve state, right? You really don't want to miss that one. Is that a fair understanding?
I would say that's fair, yeah. Missing the stake is bad. It's quite a pain to get out dissolved and actually get your capital back. It can be done, it's not impossible, but it's really not worth the pain to do with it. Just
Yeah.
in I would say far and wide, most people do not give it a second thought. As far as like actually running it, they will do the node deposit and then they will let the node daemon stake automatically for them once the timing is right, because it knows how to like check to see whether or not something is stakeable and then actually run the transaction. So yeah, like 99% of node operators don't even know that there's a second one. The mini pool just sort of stakes itself automatically once the timing is right.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I guess my advice to folks is just know the process and know as you're creating these LEB8s, especially the second one you made with credits, which will start happening today and later on. I mean, just pay attention to it, just in case something does go wrong. You know, we don't want to see the emails out of the announcement channel as, you know, anyone with the node operator address, you know, you left your lights on. You haven't had LEB8 that hasn't called stake yet. You know,
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to be that person. So just keep an eye on it. It should work. If you have problems, come to support. But just I guess kind of be aware of that. So, well, thank you, Joe, for kind of explaining that. I think it helps everybody to kind of hear it again as they're experiencing it. Maybe it went in one ear out the other before Atlas, but now that they're experiencing it in real life, I think it's just becoming more apparent, and there's just a lot of questions. So, thank you for explaining it for the umpteenth time.
No problem. Happy to help, guys.
Yeah. Well, so as we kind of get to the end of this thing here, let me check in with Mav, who's been kind of patiently waiting off to the side here. And just, you know, you talked about potential problems. I think there's only two that I see. One, gas is just freakingly high today. I don't know why it is that Rocket Pool always chooses to launch on the day that gas is just astronomical. I don't know what it is about that. But then the other thing here is we're real quickly going to run into a node operator lean environment, or maybe it's I guess it's an rETH lean environment, right? Where the deposit pool is starting to approach zero here. Mav, what are your thoughts? Or when when marketing? When are they going to hire somebody to help you with marketing? Can you do anything to fix this?
Potentially. Certainly pros and cons of operating on the blockchain that people actually use, right? I'm looking at the gas now, 74. I don't know, has it come down a little bit still? It feels like not that long ago we were having single-digit gas, right? But in terms of marketing, maybe I'll just ramble for a little bit. I have a hard stop at the half hour because I do have some marketing to do. I've got a call with Protocol, one of many, because as we know, and as you've kind of mentioned, Ken, it's an exciting new time for the rETH side of the protocol. So when we talk about marketing a lot of the time, this introductory piece, some of the listeners may already be familiar with, I think people can kind of confuse it with paid advertising, right? I mean, to be fair, that's more or less the commonly accepted definition of the term when it's used in the industry, right, in the context of when marketing. So for Rocket Pool in particular, we are in a little bit of an interesting position, right? As we've kind of gone through 2023, there has been a little bit more regulatory attention on the world of liquid staking. And we do have examples, and we do know that when protocols or companies or exchanges have kind of run afoul of the regulators, a lot of the time what is actually being looked at is the marketing documentation. So what is a protocol saying about itself? Some of the red flags that might be raised in terms of APRs or rewards, or talking about particular tokens, kind of creates a situation where it may be a little bit better to step back from using some of these terms, at least from Rocket Pool itself. I am getting to a certain point here, but let me just build up a little bit of context first. So if I thought about Atlas a few months ago, the environment in my head was a little bit different, right? I was thinking that there would be some competition, more competition. We've seen this a lot. Protocols talk about liquid staking, decentralized liquid staking. It seems pretty straightforward. I think we know that it may not be as easy as it seems. It's all very well to say you're launching something, but it's kind of a case of believing it when you see it. So from the two sides of the protocol that we have, the node operator side, the rETH side, obviously rETH makes for an easier advertising target, right? It is kind of difficult to advertise to node operators or potential node operators. It can be done. There are certain channels, but a lot of the kind of more standard ways of going about this, banner ads and the like, they may work, but certainly in terms of your CPA, which is a metric we use in marketing, your cost per acquisition, it's probably going to be pretty high. You're going to have to run a lot of ads. You're going to have to spend a lot of money to target a few people. And right now, to reiterate for Rocket Pool, there's not really a whole lot of other protocols out there, especially in on the node operator side. So short term, yes, we're probably going to see a lack of rETH demand, but thankfully there are ways that we can and we are working to stimulate this. So on the one side, we have things like DApp Node, which is launching soon. So that will help to increase the node operator side. Some of the initiatives, of course, like that, can potentially put the protocol into a state of being less balanced, but still it's a pretty good timing regardless. If you think about the long term, the big picture for DApp Node to launch this support now with the Hyperine Atlas. So we're assuming that there is going to be a significant period where the deposit pool is empty, but at the end of the day, there is really no guarantee. So we're unlikely to ever be filling up as quickly as under premium, right? I think people need to consider that that was a quite unique situation where there was a significant price premium, where there were bots making instant deposits, and that's kind of like not a normal situation that we're going to be in. We should expect to see deposits trickle in over a period of time. There's going to be a slight period of re-educating the market that rETH is a pretty viable token, a competitor to STETH. You can get it now, whereas in the past, any kind of calculations that people might have done in terms of their return or the viability of rETH in DeFi always had that kind of premium of several months worth of rewards whacked off just to enter a position. Obviously, that's not a concern anymore. And we also do still believe that in the long term, whether the long term is 3 months or 3 years, but the protocol will be constrained on the node operator side. I think there's a lot of evidence supporting that. So you may have seen, I think Joe actually mentioned something last night, that some of these deposits that are coming in, quite large amounts, but there's people, there's institutions, there's wallets out there. Their size is really size, right? We've seen 4-digit deposits. Will we see 5-digit deposits? Well, there's certainly wallets out there with 5-digit amounts of ETH in them. And for a lot of people, as we know, liquid staking, whether it's for tax reasons or for an institution or a company compliance reasons, it may be easy to go down the liquid staking road. So these entities will never realistically be a node operator. So there is an amount of latent demand there. It's just not instant. Another thing that we have to consider, I think, is we're now in a situation where there's no longer a kind of market share play going on. Well, there is, but there's another important consideration in terms of growing the pie. So a few people have talked about this when we had Justin Drake on a little while ago, and that's something that he talked about quite a bit. There's this kind of wave of these liquid stakers who, because they can access their funds now, are more likely to engage, and they probably won't do this on day one. As I said, it's kind of a period of re-educating the market, which we're working on to encourage these people to stake with Rocket Pool. If you think about the node operator side, is it likely that there will be 2, 3, 4 times the number of node operators around to run mini pools with Rocket Pool? I would say that the chance is probably low. If there's people with the kind of the interests, the skills to do this, there's a decent chance quite a few of these people are already running mini pools, right? And who knows, potentially in the future, they may decide to diversify away into another decentralized option, Statewise V3, etc. But in terms of liquid staking, could that 10, 15% or so of ETH stake go to 30 or 45 or 60 potentially? And there's a pretty good chance that much of it will be liquid staked. So that's kind of what we have to go for right now. There has been a bit of uncertainty, right, in terms of the competitive landscape, in terms of regulatory action, and we kind of in a bit of a wait and see mode, at least when it comes to this paid advertising. So let me talk about some of the things that we are doing that kind of answer the question of when marketing, but potentially in a way that that people may not be thinking about when they hear that phrase first up. One thing is that we're quite fortunate in that Rocket Pool is big enough to be relevant, but still small enough to be able to work closely with some of our, I don't like saying the word partners, but at the end of the day, some of these protocols are kind of our partners who integrate Rocket Pool, integrate rETH, that we can work with them. We can promote rETH as an option. We have a Chainlink Oracle. Other protocols lack that, which is kind of a big stepping stone. And there are a whole lot of exciting things coming up. So even some of the integrations that we have already, the direct integration into OKX, the MetaMask integration, which has kind of been sitting there unable to be used, which is now live. These are going to start having an effect, and it's kind of incremental, right? The more of these integrations that we have live, they all help to contribute to filling up this deposit pool. Other things such as Aave Emo, that's particularly exciting, right? That's not live yet. In terms of STETH, we know that a large part of the adoption of STETH was through DeFi applications like Aave Emo. And personally, although I haven't given it too much detailed thought, I feel like there's maybe a Twitter thread that could be written in terms of the fact that rETH is probably an ideal candidate for Aave Emo, right? It's similar to a leverage position. The risk that you face is a quote unquote depeg of the asset, and we know that rETH has proven to be more resilient in terms of holding that price, and also we know that there are arguably fewer of certain tail risks that could cause that depeg. We've seen a couple of examples recently of how that might go for more centralized protocols. So these are things that are going to almost certainly come on live. They're going to drive a lot of demand, and us working with these other protocols, it is almost like we can leverage what we're doing at Rocket Pool, right, through these other protocols. They can reach their audiences. So it may not be as flashy or provide the kind of boost of seeing a Rocket Pool banner on a website. But I believe in terms of the ROI, in terms of the impact, it is through these integrations that we can drive a lot of value for Rocket Pool. And again, big player, very dominant, but who else is out there really? Again, that Chainlink Oracle price feed that we've been waiting for such a long time is really it's a pretty important piece of the puzzle. So I've kind of rambled on for a little bit. I feel like there may have been a couple of questions in trading.
Yeah, there was one Win Ledger.
I know. I think it was Langers who was talking to Ledger, Exodus, maybe a couple of others. These are all in the works, and they also fall under the same category, right? We can do a lot more for Rocket Pool through some of these other protocols. I'm fairly confident now that I'm saying this and it ends up on YouTube. It's kind of on the record. I feel like the kind of imbalance, if any, will probably be shorter lived than most people think, because there is a lot that we can do. The IMC can help out as well to really drive that RE side. So at the end of the day, I understand from a node operator's perspective, right? We would ideally want that queue to be full permanently, so everyone can launch all the mini pools they like whenever they like. Unfortunately, due to the way that Rocket Pool operates, as we know, being decentralized, permissionless, operating on smart contracts. That's probably not going to be the case. But yeah, I guess bear with us. We are working hard behind the scenes. Some of these conversations have been going on for a long time. In the case of BitHum, the Korean exchange, while I don't expect listing RPL to be a kind of massive driver for rETH usage, it is a good example of how kind of discussions that take place over weeks or months can finally come to fruition. And there are many of these that are happening right now. So pretty excited. And I do have about 2 minutes left before I have to jump off and jump onto one of these calls.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I was just going to thank you, Mav, for kind of everything you're doing, both leading up to Atlas and then the works afterwards. I know there's a lot going on, and I just think it's part of the dynamics. But just keep up the fabulous work that you're doing.
Also, one thing that some people have been talking about for a little while, happy to announce the coin market cap page for RPL is finally accurate. They removed the max supply number, which was lower than the circulating supply. Obviously not possible, but as of about 24 hours, I saw they did remove that. So finally, our RPL page is, at least in the important parts, accurate. I think there may be a little couple of tweaks on the rETH page, but we finally got there. A little win.
Oh, excellent. And then just as we wrap up here, because I know, Mav, you've got to go, but Joe, if I just ask you for any things that we didn't talk about that you feel that's important for the community to know about. You were kind of hinting that there might be some bread on today's call. Is there anything you can share with the community?
Yeah, so the thing that I really want to put into people's minds and have them start talking about is the idea that when we first created Rocketpool, we kind of had like a vision for where we wanted it to go and the features that we wanted to add and how to sort of better serve both the rETH holders and the node operators and things. But that vision has always kind of come around to having a end-to-end experience, being able to deposit, being able to earn rewards, and then being able to exit and withdraw at the very end of it and get the capital plus the rewards back and stuff. And as has been essentially demonstrated by the guys that have exited already, that has been realized. Atlas and Smart Node 1.9 is now fully capable of satisfying that dream. So at this point, the major features are kind of like they're in place, they're done, and we, instead of sort of mandating this is what we want to see in the next protocol updates, we as a development team, we're gonna try and turn it over to the community and ask you guys, all right, you're in the driver's seat, so to speak. What do you want to see in the next update? And work with us to kind of determine what the timeline is going to look like and when each feature can go into, like, can it go into the next update or the update after that or something along those lines, and help us kind of like define what it actually is. Like, we have some ideas, but I don't think that we're going to do the same kind of like, this is what we want the next one to be. I think that's very much going to come down to community feedback and interactions and things. I know one of the things that Nashua mentioned earlier on, for example, was that like Atlas didn't really have an RPIP, right? The same way that most of the other updates have. And he wanted to see the next major protocol update have an RPIP at the very least and follow the formal protocol for doing these upgrades. And that's what I think we want to do, is have the conversation with you guys and put one of those things together and follow the entire end-to-end chain in that respect. So think about what you would want to see. Like, what could Rocketpool, the protocol, do differently, improve? What could it provide to satisfy whatever needs you happen to have? Let us know, and we're happy to have those conversations now that it's live and it's working. Ken, it's working. My God,
I know.
it's so nice to see.
I know, you got to be like a little numb, right? Like, it's too good to be true to be that it's working, right? And I don't know, I'm kind of in a weird spot because I haven't launched my LED yet, but it's like, it's working, but like, I should wait, but it's working.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a little bit giddy, and I imagine without any sleep, you got to be totally totally on edge there. But you heard it from Joe. We heard Langers mention it last time. They're looking for community input, so be thinking it. Everybody be DMing Joe with LEB4s. Tell him what you want in the next release. I guess it's Dan Kuhn that's coming up, right? I don't know if our release will be all timed with that or around that. Maybe we try to get off
Den
schedule.
Kuhn.
Yeah,
Den
yeah,
Cancun, yeah.
yeah. And then Mav had texted me, even though he went and had a drop off. He did want me to remind everybody that there are a couple of three community events coming up. I guess there's a bonus Twitter space that I think I'll be hosting with Mav this week. Tomorrow, it's currently scheduled tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific. So look at the events channel to get your correct time. That's in there, but I think we'll begin to explore a little bit more of the marketing, and we'll actually kind of see what happens after the LEB8s and the deposit pool to try to kind of measure some of the rETH demand that everybody is in. And as we're coming to the weekend, I expect the next wave of LEB8 conversions to start happening as gas prices hopefully come out of the triple digits here. There is this week a staking panel discussion that I assume Rocket Pool is going to be invited to. I know some of the other attendees are Stakewise, Diva, and EtherFi. I think that's going to be real interesting. And then coming up on the 25th of April, there's another community space, and this is the one with Langers and Mav, and I guess they're going to have a special guest. They haven't announced who it is, and I think Jasper is going to be hosting this one, and that's certainly one that you'll want to tune into to kind of figure out here. But definitely keep an eye on the events channel. I don't think the Atlas launch party is yet stopping. I think the team's got a couple of surprises in the works for us, and so it should be a lot of fun. Anything else, Joe, before we call it a day, and you hopefully are hopefully off shift and can get some sleep here?
Off the top of my head, I don't think so. I mean, if you guys have any questions about how things work now, both with Chappelle or Atlas and stuff, you know where to go, right? Our support channel is always open. I suspect that most of the people in this call are not going to have any questions. They're just here for moral support or whatever. But for those of you that are listening to the replay on YouTube or whatever, we're always happy to help get you sorted through whatever node issues you happen to have. And thanks for being on the ride with us, man.
Yeah, it's been a blast. It's been a journey, and I'm just as excited to see what's going to come next. But let's go ahead. Let's call it a call here. I'll be able to DM Mav and tell him to shut down the Twitter space here. But Joe, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure, and congratulations again on the successful launch of Atlas, and already approaching 24 hours. This afternoon will be 24 hours of pretty clear trajectory. All right, everyone, have a great day.
All right, take care, guys.